On March 13th, 1997, when the Hale-Bopp comet was very clear in the northwest sky, thousands of people were outside trying to get a glimpse of it when they also caught a glimpse. These orbs, giant orbs, equidistant in a V formation of 1 mile to 2 mile wide in some very credible reports. And that's the particular area where these phenomena keep popping up from my vantage point. The Native Americans living in the basin between South Mountain and the Estrellas have told me that not only were they looking up at the Phoenix Lights during the mass sighting, but they've been looking up at them for centuries.
I live in a community called Loop, northeast of Flagstaff, on the Navajo Indian Reservation. We'll have to go back in time one day before. We saw 6 to 7 lights that were circling along the horizon. The entire street came out. It was almost like a block party. Everybody turned off their lights, everybody sat in their front yards, and everybody watched this unusual light show.
I squeezed down the best of what I found and finally came forward in 2004 with the Phoenix Lights, a skeptic's discovery that we are not alone.
10,000 people approximately witnessed this, one of the largest experiences of this sort ever recorded.
The Phoenix Lights phenomenon didn't seem to be falsifiable in any way. It was being validated by most everybody that saw it.
The ultimate, shall we say, insult was the governor of the state of Arizona, Fife Symington, finally calling a news conference saying that he has finally got the answer to the Phoenix Lights, and he introduces some staff member dressed up as a space alien.
People got very angry because here is the top elected official of the state making fun of what I estimate to be close to probably 10,000 people saw this.
Under the watchful eye of the public, Symington retracted his statement.
If you had been here 10 years ago and standing out here and looking up there at the lights and the view, you would have been astounded. You would have been amazed.
The so-called Phoenix Lights were seen by many people in 1997. Skeptics say they were military aircraft or flares, but not the former governor.
It was probably some form of an alien spacecraft.
On our way to Barcelona to retrieve the evidence.
Dr. Bravo.
Hi,
Are you ready for the trip?
I'm ready for the trip. I'm so excited. We're going to do some very wonderful work, and I can't wait to get the results.
Upon arriving in Spain to look at the being for the very first time, I was kind of skeptical. It was definitely a game changer for my thought process to actually see it in person than to see it on film. The first thing we had to do was go to the radiology lab because we needed x-rays and CAT scans before we did anything.
Porque esto ya se lo comenté que era un poco difícil de hacer. Es explicarlo, ¿ok?
The best we can get.
Lo mejor que podamos. Porque evidentemente no se puede manipular para nada.
No.
The head radiologist at the center saw the being and was quite impressed. And the first thing she said was, "Wow, that looks like an alien."
But we haven't, so that's really okay. This is fabulous.
This was pretty good for you.
Yeah, for that, yeah. Okay, that's good.
This one is complete.
And when the CAT scan images started coming up on the computer, it was just profound. And I saw inside the bone, and I saw, organs and lung material, brain material. I knew that this was not a hoax, it was not fake, that this was actually some sort of living creature.
Right, well, if somebody made it, they have a future in microsurgery because they were smart enough then to put in these millimeter-wide bone holes where the arteries go in to feed the bone marrow. And so now the challenge is to prove what it is, right? My interest, frankly, is to disprove that it's anything unusual or anything paranormal. I would like to prove that this is human. I would like to prove that this is just an interesting mutation, but obviously if you leave your mind open, or I should say if you leave your mind closed to alternatives, you'll never see what those alternatives might actually be. In every situation with scientists, your reputation's at stake. You know, I have every expectation that even doing this is going to lead to some ribbing from some of my colleagues, right? But I think that that's perfectly acceptable because at the end of the day, who's going to validate these things? If someone isn't willing to step forward and do it right, then you're going to have it sitting out there forever, hanging in limbo, right? I mean, if you let other people and their opinions stop you from believing what you know to be true, then all you're doing is stopping the possibility of progress.
Anytime anybody tries to study this subject seriously, we're subject to ridicule. I'm a full professor at a relatively major university, and I'm certain that my colleagues at the university laugh at me and hoot and holler behind my back when they hear that I have an interest in studying unidentified flying objects.
There's really a subtle kind of suppression at play here. You don't worry about what the CEO of Enron thinks about what you say. You worry about what your friends think. You worry about what your parents would think if you posted whatever you care about on Facebook or something.
We take the risk to appear to be a crackpot. There may be people who are going to be threatened by that for any number of reasons.
My feeling was that I was involved in a lot of strange activities, so I tried to say to myself, let's not look at this with too much exposure and mention it because there's a question of credibility.
This should be the subject of rigorous scientific investigation and not the subject of rubbishing by tabloid newspapers.
MUFON is the Mutual UFO Network, and it was founded in 1969 by Walt Andrus. And our mission statement is the scientific study of UFOs for the benefit of humanity. MUFON is the world's largest UFO investigative organization. We have approximately 3,000 members worldwide. Approximately 500 of those have their PhDs. These are people who really would like to delve deep into the UFO phenomenon and try to figure out not only what it is, but how it's happening.
Armed with what he thought was some of the best available evidence, including the Phoenix Lights, Steve Greer organized a Project Starlight briefing before several Congress, Pentagon, and White House staff members. Things seem to be on track for disclosure.
Of the device and the internal, all of it, with a lot of detail, and this is a cutaway. This was done and escaped government control, whereas the Bentwaters case took 20-some years in England. So this is in our possession and not the Ministry of Defense. So,
where it would never be found.
Where it would go into a black hole, right? Yeah.
But then the bad news came. Sherry Adamiak, Steve's partner and longtime friend, along with Steve and another team member, were all suddenly diagnosed with a malignant cancer.
I've had these experiences since I was a child or a young man, but to articulate them so other people understand them, I need someone with capacity to hear it. She was that person. I mean, it's been,
you can't resolve
it's
things.
been very hard for me.
Oh yeah,
you know,
I
you
know.
Get up
I know
every
it
day,
has been.
you know, but. One of the last places she wanted to come was here. So she asked that her ashes be placed on the land. So we put her ashes around that tree. I don't take anything for granted, frankly, and so each time that I do a presentation or lead a group, I think, This may be the last time. The thing that has kept me going the most is not any external thing, but the experience of that near-death experience where I know that there's an aspect of us that doesn't die. That is why I can go mano a mano with these elements and not be afraid. I shouldn't say be afraid, not stand down. Everyone has fear. I've certainly had my fears. But it gives you an anchor so that you can go forward.
More than ever, Dr. Greer understood what he had always sensed. It was not the power of a cosmic field or quantum vacuum that would propel us into a new world. It was the mind.
This really is the opening to an entirely new science of consciousness.
You can maybe think of consciousness as a television set. On the TV screen, you see pictures and sounds and so forth. And if you tried to find out where that was coming from and you looked inside the television, you're not going to find it. It's not there. The signal is in the radio waves around it, invisible to us, that's being interpreted by the television as pictures and sounds. So this is very much like the state of how we understand the mind and consciousness.
Dr. John at Princeton proved that putting your awareness on a device that was a random number generator would affect it.
So you have this random number generator and it's producing 50-50 ones and zeros. And then you introduce a person into the picture and you tell them, try to affect it with their mind. Think more ones or more zeros. You measure that, and sure enough what they found was that there are more ones or more zeros being produced that correlate to that person's intention. So we can see effects being produced forwards and backwards in time, which is really strange. Distance doesn't seem to matter as much. You can get the same strength of effects if you're right in front of the REG or if you're on the other side of the planet.
Consciousness is a non-local field, and it isn't limited to your brain waves and body.
Dr. John once had the opportunity to ask the Dalai Lama if he thought the random number generators themselves were conscious. And the Dalai Lama thought about it, and his reply was that if you think they're conscious, then they're conscious.
Just like consciousness can have positive effects on the zeitgeist or ether, it can also work the other way.
Unfortunately, when you start to deal with inventors who have anomalous results that seem to be over unity, paranoia seems to accompany that process. And John Searle's famous for having a circular magnetic device that has both energy and propulsion built into one unit.
And the electric company felt that this guy was stealing money, took him to court, went to jail, his house caught fire, and all of his property and all of his designs burned.
The concept of freedom, this sort of idea of people having the liberty to pursue happiness and to pursue abundance, this has been completely, in a sense, turned upside down.
We actually reprinted a report on the military involvement of the Department of Energy. And it's so extensive, it's the major operation that goes on there.
There have been over 5,000 patents that have been sequestered by the national security state, taken out of the public domain. Many of them deal with energy technologies.
It's a policy that the military seems to feel is necessary for national security. However, at this point, we often wonder, 50 years after World War II and the Cold War, whether such sequestering is necessary.